Good morning, everybody. I've just seen a few of the comments come in because I'm broadcasting live on Facebook, and Ali D has got it exactly right. It's beautiful and sunshiny here in Dorset today, but it's a little bit chilly. My fingers are a little bit cold. I had to put the heater on in the studio this morning, which was a bit disappointing after the weekend that we've just had. Now, no matter where you are in the world, you are very, very welcome. My name is Ali Board, Alison Seaboard, and this is Technique Tuesday. This is the moment of the week where I broadcast to you. Most of the time it has been live, but there will be some pre-recorded ones coming up as my schedule gets back to, should we call it normal? Should we not go that far in labelling it? But what I can tell you is that at the moment I am live on Facebook. You might be watching me on catch up after 10 o'clock on the 6th. You might be watching through my blog or through my YouTube channel. No matter how you are watching, you are all welcome. But you are good enough to tune in to me live on a Tuesday morning on Facebook. So I need to say hello to you. Let's see who's in the room, shall we? Hillary, good morning. There's our LED. Pauline is saying that it is also sunny in Norfolk. Ulrika, a good morning from Stockholm. You are very, very welcome. Corrine says it's snowing in Scotland. Am I sad that I'm missing out on snow? I do like a bit of snow, but I did get in the garden this weekend. Jeanette is singing, the sun has got its hat on. Carry on singing, Jeanette. Marvellous. Cheryl, good morning. Heather, Christine, yes, Christine is saying that she hopes everyone had a lovely Easter. And no matter how you celebrate Easter, I hope you had a lovely, peaceful weekend. If you're in the UK, I'm guessing that some of you have managed to see your families as well, which is very exciting, isn't it? Pat, good morning. Linda, yes, lots of people saying it's cold. Andrea, Anne. Anne is saying that even though she's in Caithness, it may as well be Arctic. Joanna, good morning. Joy, Maureen, Jill. Yes, thank you, Jill. I did have a very lovely Easter. Thank you very much. I got to work with the Artist Demo Days team for 2 days, then had 2 days off. Count them. 2 days off. Marvellous. Rosie is over in France. Good morning. Ruth, Sandy saying it's snowy in Norfolk. I bet Denise Allen's got snow. Jilly, good morning. Alison, good morning. Joe, Diane is saying just painting bees from the Artist Demo Days tutorial at the weekend. My hands are blue with various ink colours. Sorry, not sorry, Diane. Kathy, good morning. Viv, Thyra, Linda, Paula, Debbie, Sylvia, Rosemary. Gosh, there's lots of you in this morning. Janet, are you all right? Lynn, Jean, Brenda, Linda D, Anne B. Oh, we've got our Anarchy of Anne's in. Jean, Chris. Chris is saying it's dazzling in Staffordshire. 2 Chris's in a row. Who else we got? Sandra, Carolyn, Wendy is in Melbourne. Carolyn is in Spain. Audrey, Patricia, Susan, and B. Good morning to all of you. If your comment comes in and I miss it, I do apologise. They come in a little bit thick and fast, so I struggle to keep up with them. Shall we get you up to speed with where we are with our landscape project? Here is the photograph donated to us by the lovely Catherine, who does sometimes pop up in the chat as well. So if she does, say good morning to her. Morning, Jennifer. Morning, Arlene. Morning, Lynn. This is the Camino de Santiago, and this is the view we are currently tackling, looking at various ways of creating weather, looking at that mist and trying to get our balance of colours. Here is where we got to last week. So this is these are our little colour tests that we did. So just to give you a bit of a recap, don't forget that if you would like to follow along, then you can go over to my blog post, alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk, and you'll see the Ali's blog link there. Don't worry, it will all be in a post for you to catch up with later. We drew it out, we tore our watercolour paper to suit our composition, that's the word I'm struggling for on a Tuesday morning. And then we last week we tested out some colours. So this is our colour palette so far. So we've got raw sienna light, we've got cobalt violet, we've got cobalt blue, green apatite genuine, and Jane's grey. Now, these are all Daniel Smith colours. That is a coincidence. I haven't picked them because they're Daniel Smith colours. I picked them because they were the colours that I wanted for the photograph. And if I just take you back to the photograph again, you will absolutely see why I chose those colours. Let's go back to overhead. And we were kind of discussing colours at length last week. We were talking about them all running into each other. I was suggesting that you test them on your spare bit of watercolour paper. If you want to see all of those discussions, you can either go back through the Facebook posts, or more importantly, you can go back to our painting community, Learning to Paint with Alison Seaboard, which is housed on Facebook. Ask to become a member and then share your successes. Ask your questions, share your thoughts. Last week, we put some yellow down in the sky. We put some of that raw sienna light down in the sky, didn't we? And a little bit of the cobalt violets, just to give that kind of wispiness. Is that a word? Not sure. It is now. Wispiness of cloud up in the sky. We've still got the blue to add. We're doing something called a double sky, where you put one layer of colour down and then you put another layer of colour over the top. We also popped a little bit of that yellow into the foreground to remind ourselves that we've got that kind of bright shaft of light coming down on the left-hand side. We couldn't decide, could we, whether it was actual crop or whether it is the light bouncing off the land. It doesn't matter. You don't have to over-describe it. So the point of today, morning everyone who's just joined us, morning, morning Sharon, and Linda and Pam and Paula, you're very kind, and Jan, good morning. What we're going to do today is we're going to work on this sky area a little bit more. We're going to work on these distant hills a little bit more, and we're going to start attacking that misty kind of quality down here in the valley. We'll see how we get on as to what else we put in today. I wrote in my blog this morning, because I tried to write my blog slightly ahead of broadcasting, so that as soon as the broadcast is finished, you can go over to the blog and it will be there for you to watch again or to read a little bit more about it. I did write in there that I know some of you are getting frustrated at the pace of this project, and that you want to kind of get to the end. That's it, it's not a problem. If you want to get to the end of the project, go and paint it all. You've got the photograph. You can do several versions of it if you like. I'm just trying to slow that process down so that you can understand where my head is at and you can see it in a little bit more detail. That's why we're doing it in lots of parts, okay? I have my colours here. They are from tubes squeezed out into empty pans, because that is the consistency of paint that I particularly prefer. But of course, that's entirely up to you. You can use it from a tube, you can use it from a pan. It's entirely up to you. Here's the cobalt blue that I'm going to be dealing with first off, and I'm going to be looking at popping that blue into the sky to try to get that distance. Lots of people saying very happy with slowing it down. Yeah, I know, I do paint a bit fast for some of you sometimes, don't I? And I've got really kind of simple materials here today. I've got my good old SAA imitation sable brush. This is my size 10. Joe is saying more haste, less speed. Less haste, more speed. I'm not sure which way round. Dear. This is a size 10 brush, which I'm going to be using for the sky area. I've got my pot of water here. I try to always get my pot of water in shot, because I think it's important sometimes for you to see actually how I manage the water that's on my brush, because that is a big discussion to be had sometime, isn't it? And then, of course, over here on the left-hand side, I do have my safety blanket, which is my bit of kitchen roll. A lot of you will have heard me talk often about how I don't like cheap and nasty kitchen roll. That is not going to affect your picture at all. It's not going to affect the success of your picture. I just don't like cheap and nasty toilet roll because I go through too much of it. And so one sheet like that. This is the, I think it's called Blitz, or this might be the own brand supermarket alternative. I can just use one sheet and that will do me. I get through bucket loads of cheap kitchen roll otherwise. What I do is good morning, lovely Rachel. Lovely to see you. What I do is I do knock the pattern out of it, and I knock the pattern out of it because it has got a very regular pattern. You can probably see the sort of trefoil that I've got here. I don't want that appearing in my painting anywhere, so we'll have that to one side. And then because I am going to start on the sky today, I've got my cobalt blue already squeezed out into this pan. So I'm going to take my spray bottle and I'm going to activate that. And I can allow that water to sink into the colour, and that will be then the perfect consistency for me to paint in just a second. Now, if we take you back to the photograph, I'm sorry that I keep showing it to you, but it is really important that you understand what I am taking from the photograph and what I'm leaving out of the photograph. Can you see you've got that beautiful, the way that the clouds are formed so that you get a sense of distance. That is the thing I'm going to be aiming for today. And I use the word aiming for very, very loosely. If it comes off, brilliant. If it doesn't, never mind. It's very tempting when you're painting skies to do a brushstroke that I call the Dulux brushstroke. Other paint brands are available, where you go left, right, left, right, left, right, like this. And then you wonder why your sky looks artificial. And what I'm going to try to do is to pull my colour in from the top to get that kind of vanishing point, which was over here somewhere. And then I'm going to try and use my kitchen roll to lift out a few cloud shapes by rolling it in that direction. So shall we crack on with it and stop talking about it? You could do it onto dry paper if you wanted to. I'm going to give it a little bit of a spritz, not too much. I think, to be honest, that's as much habit as it is anything else. But you can see that there it's just got a bit of a sheen over the top of it. It's not all over. It's to buy me some time when the colour goes in. So there goes my brush into lovely clean water, which won't be so clean in a second. And I'm going to pick up my cobalt blue, and this is how I get colour onto my brush. I roll my brush into it. I don't kind of dunk it in that way. I roll the bristles of my brush into the colour, and then that way I get colour all over my brush. Where should I put that? Where I'm not going to dunk my arm into it. Over there, I think. So over on this top left hand side, we're going to get a little bit of that cobalt blue. Yes, I know it's very bright. I know it's very bright. We're going to pull some of that colour in. We're going to put the brush into the water, and then we're going to move that colour. In some places, we're going to leave some dry areas. In other places, we're going to let it do the thing that it does best. We're going to let it come down over the yellow just temporarily. But the one thing we're not going to do, are we, boys and girls? We are not going to overpoke it. There will be no faffing, okay? So there you can see, pulling that colour in, moving it around with the water. And then what I'm going to do with my kitchen roll pulled into lines, I'm going to start over here, I'm going to roll it at a diagonal very lightly. I'm not touching the paper an awful lot. What I'm hoping will happen, and there it is there, look, we've got those lovely lines forming. And what this also does is it takes the majority of the moisture away from the paper. So you can see as well that it does dry a little bit lighter. Now near the horizon where I want that yellow to come back through again, I can push a little bit harder with that so that that yellow starts to come through. That is much better. Now what I can't do, because the kitchen roll has now touched the surface, what I can't do is fill my brush full of water and shove that back in. Why can't I do that? Because I do not want cauliflowers in this. Officially called back runs. Cauliflowers are when you re-enter your painting, or faff about with it, as it's known in Dorset, and you've got a much wetter brush than you have piece of paper. And what the water does is that it pushes all the pigment away, it makes it explode, and then you get that kind of cauliflower shape. Now, I've got to leave it alone. I've got to step away from the painting. So I need to dry it. I've got my trusty old heat gun down here. And then we'll have a look at those hills in the distance, shall we? So let's give it a bit of a blast. Now, in all the time that I've been chatting, what has happened is that the colour has started to sink into the paper. So you can see the shine has gone off it. What does happen sometimes is if you take the heat gun to it too early, you can also cause cauliflowers. So let's get the heat gun on it and get it dried. Excuse me for just a moment. So I'm drying it on the front. I am also going to dry it on the back in a little while too. It's not too wet, so that's a good thing. It's going to dry quite quickly. And I've got to ensure that I dry it evenly, otherwise my paper is going to bend a little bit. So lots of people saying that they struggle with skies. Lots of people saying, let me just see your comments. Lots of people saying that it's stressful. It can be. It can be. It's the hyperventilating. Is that my new name, Pam? Ali Nofaf. Ali Nofaf. I like it. I might adopt it. So let's give it a dry. It's getting there. Dry it from the back as well. This is why I don't stick my paper down, so that I can crack on with it. And then because I'm working on a cotton paper, I need to reshape it. It's the jumper scenario. What is she talking about? You know when you get a really posh jumper and it says reshape while damp? This is what I'm doing. It's a cotton-based paper. It's effectively the same thing. Okay, morning everyone who's just joined us. Lovely to have you here as always. So I'm quite happy with that. That's all right. It's a little bit green down here. Actually, it looks greener in the camera than it does in real life. So I'll photograph it when I've got as far as I've got, and I'll pop it on the blog so that you can see a better colour. Let's take you back to the photo. So what is it we're going to do next? We're going to tackle those distant hills, and you've got variations, haven't you, on a theme? You've got variations in tone. So you can see that one in the distance, that kind of flatter version that of the Pyrenees, that is much paler in tone than the ones that are in the middle distance, which are a little bit darker in tone. And then you've got that little patch of green popping up from the mist. So shall we give those a go? Ooh, this is the bit that worries me. Sky's not a problem. Sky's not a problem. Middle distance. Anywho, what are we going to do for those? Let's get the cobalt blue back. Let's get the cobalt violet deep back in. So we'll give that a bit of a spritz as well. And we'll get the Jane's Grey in as well. Let's give that a spritz as well. If you haven't got these colours, it's not going to affect the success of your painting. You could have any violet, really. You could make up your own. You could have a little bit of ultramarine and permanent rose to make a violet. Be aware that that's quite a bright mix, so you're going to need a lot of water with that. But you might have manganese violet or imperial violet, all sorts of things. Test them. Test them. That's the secret to it. Test them together to see if they work as a palette. That is your secret. And here is the Jane's Grey. You might have translucent grey. You might have one of the SAA colours. This is really a convenience colour. You might have burnt sienna and ultramarine. You might have burnt umber and ultramarine. You might have black. All those sorts of things. Okay, so these are the ones that I'm working with. First one I'm going to work with is I'm going to work with the cobalt violet. So I'm going to coat my brush just as I did before, rolling my brush. You can see I need to squeeze out some cobalt violet into there. And I'm going to pop. I know that the hill in the photograph isn't violet, okay? I get that. I want mine to be. And it's my painting and I'll do what I like with it. So over here, I'm going to pop a little bit of that cobalt violet into that hill shape. Why have I not got my glasses on? I forget every time, don't I? There we go. I can see what I'm doing now. So we're going to pop a little bit of cobalt violet into that distant hill. I'm going to wash my brush out in the water. I'm going to roll my brush onto my kitchen roll. And then I'm going to take that damp brush and I'm going to fuzz out the bottom section. Okay, fuzzy, smudged, however you want to describe it. But I'm fuzzing that out so it looks misty and distant. Okay, now very flippant of me to go, oh, you just put some colour down and you smudge it out. Of course, it is easier said than done. I do understand that. But blending out is just a trick. All you need to do is understand how wet this is, and then use the tip of it back into that colour. I think another thing to pay attention with these types of hill shapes as well is that they are longer than you think they are. Yeah, they're not hills like you draw when you're younger. They're not hills that do this. Yeah, they're constructed of very kind of straight lines, and they're longer and flatter than you think they are. Okay, so you probably saw I pulled that color along into a very elongated shape. Okay, so now that we've got that, morning Anita. Yes, Geraldine, fuzz out. We so need to put a dictionary together of art tutor terms, don't we? Now that I've got those in, I want to work on these, but I don't want these hills to run into this hill. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with giving them a bit of a dry. It's all fine and dandy, yeah? There's nothing wrong with using a little bit of heat on it. You just have to be aware that sometimes the heat can affect the colour. Now, can you see, I don't know if you can see that, but my paper is starting to curl up. Can you see that? So that's why I also dry it from the back. And you can see it start to sink to the bottom. Okay, it starts to flatten out again. Heat gun off, down to one side, out. Take my paper, reshape. There we go. And there's my piece of paper nice and flat again. So you don't have to stick your paper down all the time. Yeah, you can have it free and clear. It's not a problem. Right, let's tackle these hills now. And for these hills, I want a little bit of cobalt violet. I want a little bit of cobalt blue. And I want some of my Jane's grey too. Because we said, didn't we, in the photograph. And let me just get you back to that photograph. Ooh. Hello, I pressed the wrong button. In that photograph, we said, didn't we, that those hills that are a little bit, those Pyrenees that are a little bit closer to us are darker, aren't they? So we do need a little bit of depth in there. Okay, so let's get those in. So for that, I'm going to find my brush. What have I done with that? Oh, dear me. If you're wondering why I put it at a slight angle, it's simply because I am right-handed and I'm trying to work across like this. If I keep it straight, it's very difficult for me to work left to right. And because I'm sitting down and being lazy, I can't move. So I'm turning it at an angle ever so slightly. If you're left-handed, I know there are some left-handed people in the room, you might want to work that way. I am right-handed, so I'm going to do that with it. Let's go into the colour. Now, we're going to pick up a little bit of cobalt blue to start with. We know that that's very bright. Look at that. So I'm going to add extra water back onto my brush. You see, I picked up the colour first, added the water to it afterwards. And what we're going to do is, let's start along here. We can pop a little bit of blue in, wash out the brush, pick up a little bit of cobalt violet, pop that in too, wash the brush out. Pick up a little bit of the Jane's Grey, layer that in over the top. So those colours are blending together really nicely. We don't have to paint everything in. It's not necessary to paint every last bit of it in. Washing out the brush, controlling the water on the brush and smudging it across just the tip of my brush. A very light touch. Over on the blog, you will read much more about that light touch and why it's so important. Now, because we're after mist, I'm going to lightly roll my kitchen roll back into that bit of damp paint so that hopefully you get that sort of sense of swirling mist going on. Have I seen a question just come in? Pen, are you working on dry paper? Yes, I am, Pen, to get that nice crisp edge that I've got going on up there. Okay, so let's do that again, shall we? I'm going to very quickly show you the photo just so that we know where we are. Can you see that? All over there, all looking good. Let's do that process again, shall we? So I'm going to move over here now. This time I am after just these little mountains that are poking up here. That's all I'm after. So back into the water. Need to control it a little bit. Back onto my cobalt blue. Very strong colour, so it goes back in the water. So we've got that kind of diffusion already on the brush, yeah? Where should we go with this one? Let's start in the middle, that lovely crisp edge that we've got going in over there. Into the water. Picking up some cobalt violet. Need to control it a little bit. There we go. There's that bit of cobalt violet which we can add to it. Back into the water. Into the Jane's Grey. Adding that in as well. Now I'm going to make this darker as it crosses in front of that hill that's in the distance, and I need to work quickly. I need to stop yakking on. Back into the water, really good washout, controlling the amount of water on your brush, pulling that colour, smudging it down, pulling it right across. We've got this one to do, haven't we? And then taking that bit of kitchen roll and rolling it back in so you get that mistiness. Why can't I go back in with my brush now? Because I will get cauliflowers. Okay, these are much more colourful than are in the photograph. Yeah, much more colourful. Am I bothered about that? No, of course I'm not bothered about that. Because it's my painting, it's my interpretation of it. You don't have to slavishly follow the way that the colours are going in the photograph. This is all about your interpretation of it. What Sally D just said, considering all the years that she's been fortunate to benefit from my tuition, that's very kind. There is always something that I learn from these demonstrations. It's so great being able to see all that really close-up attention to detail. Ali, I'm really pleased that that's a thing, because I do think sometimes, particularly in the rush of a class, this is why it's so important to slow it down, isn't it? Because there'll always be something to learn. Working with the Artist Demo Days team over the weekend, I learned loads from watching them back. Ways that I thought, oh, do you know what? I've not thought about that before. Never one way to do it. Always lots of ways to do it. Thank you very much. Yes, and that blending out technique. Get a scrap of paper. I would recommend that if you are going to practice that technique, don't alter your paper. Okay, don't try it on a different type of paper and then come back to, say you chose Saunders Waterford like I have for my actual painting, and then I thought, oh, I want to try these techniques out, but I don't want to waste a piece of Saunders Waterford paper. I'll do it on a piece of Bockingford or something that isn't as expensive. The trouble is that papers react differently to different quantities of water. So whatever it is that you're trying to do on a painting, make sure that your practice paper replicates it, or do it on the back, or do it on the scrap, or do whatever it is, but don't change your paper or you'll be in trouble, okay? I'll get my waggy finger out. Oh dear. Right, let's have a look at that photo. Now we've got, haven't we, that little bit of green popping up, that kind of tree covered hill in the middle distance. That's what we've got to tackle next. So let's get it in, shall we? Let's get that green apatite genuine back in. We know we're going to use it for the foreground. Let's get a little bit of colour on, but I'm going to double load my brush. Okay, what's that? I'm going to double load it by coating it in one colour and then putting the tip of it into the cobalt violet so that I've got both colours on my brush. Then I'll come back to your questions in just a second. I've got to use what's on my brush, otherwise I will be in trouble. Over here, as I start dotting it, you'll see that I get a bit of green apatite genuine and I get a little bit of cobalt violet at the same time. I'll get close-up camera out in a minute so that you can see exactly what I'm going on about. And I'm dotting, okay? Very light touch. Nothing of any consequence at all. I'm elongating that line so that it looks like it's disappearing into the mist. And the same rules apply into the water, onto the kitchen roll, and then just the tip of it back in to smudge that bit out, to make it look like it's going into the mist. Trying so hard to not overdo it, not overplay it, not over describe it. Little bit of kitchen roll to just take the edge off that. And then hopefully what you've got is that little bit of foliage popping up above the parapet. Okay, now while that's drying, I'm going to answer a couple of questions and then I'm going to show you it in close-up camera. So let's just see what questions have come in. Let's take you back to my face. Hello. Oh, got my glasses on, can't see you. There we go. Steph is asking, am I working on rough paper? No, I'm working on not paper. Okay, I know people get really confused about these. It took me a long time when I was learning about paper to get my head around this. So you've got hot pressed paper, dead flat smooth, okay, passed through heated rollers. Rough paper, funnily enough, rough. And then you've got not, because it's not hot pressed and it's not rough. Okay, it should be called cold pressed. That's what it should be called. If you want to learn more about watercolour paper, go over to my website. There's a whole section of free stuff on there called Learning Resources. And if you go through it, you'll see that there's actually a video of me explaining all types of paper, how they're made, why I use Saunders Waterford, all of that kind of stuff. It's there. I think it's about 30 minutes. It's a cup of tea bit of video, yeah? And you probably want to make notes and you probably want to watch it in sections because it's quite a lot of technical information. What else are people asking? Helpful tip on papers. Good, that's good. Yeah, test on the same paper. Kareen is saying, compliment to all the artist demo days artists. My local group that I've just joined are impressed with my techniques that I've learned. Excellent, Kareen, that's fantastic. I've pointed them to the artist demo days page. Most of them have their degree in art. I love you, Kareen. You're just brilliant. Anne is saying, I tend to use Bockingford not as my cheap option in my notebook, so I have go back and make note for future reference. Yeah, I mean, there's a much debated thing about watercolour papers, and for everybody that tells you that you should use something, you'll get equally the number of artists that tell you you shouldn't use something. So you have to take everything with a very large pinch of salt, including what I say. Please, please, please don't take my word as the absolute kind of gospel version of it. That isn't my intention at all. You need to test the papers out. You need to work out what's good for you. Ali Hargreaves will tell you that Bockingford is the way forward. She loves using Bockingford for watercolours. I can't stand it. It's not the paper for me. In the same way that you buy variations in brand of washing powder, or you like one pen over another pen, it is absolutely personal choice. Don't let anybody tell you that you're using the wrong thing. All that they can ever tell you is what they use. This is 20 years of experience have got me to this point, because the paper that I like to use suits the way that I paint. If Bockingford or the cheapest, nastiest watercolour paper works for you, then stick with it, okay? Now, let's take you to close-up cam so that you can see those details on that little tree line. So let's get that in. Here we go then. Let's get close-up cam in. There we go. You can see that little bit of kind of dot and dash method going on. Can you see there with the double loading where I got the cobalt violet and the green apatite genuine in on the same one? There it is dotted about. What I'll do is I'm just going to turn my piece of paper ever so slightly so it's the right way around. There you go. You can see, look at that, how it's blended out into a narrow line. And you're coming across, coming across, coming across. You've got that little bit of cobalt violet. It's a nod to what's going on in the background. The cobalt violet and the green apatite genuine working together rather beautifully. and then it carries on, carries on, carries on, carries on. Look how far I took that colour, yeah? Not a kind of blobby hill. That's not a thing, is it? So all together you can see the effect that you're getting. Now, the one thing that I'm going to do before we part company today, I want to take care of a little bit of the mist, okay? Because, let's take you back to that photograph. Can you see at the bottom of the mist, it's reflecting the light above it. So you do need to, excuse me, give a nod to the colours that are in the sky or the shadows that are occurring across it. I daren't leave it this white colour or it's going to look weird. So what I'm going to do, turn paper 180 degrees, okay, so that I'm working in amongst the trees back down the page. And what I'm going to do is take the tiniest amount of my Jane's Grey, just the tiniest amount. You could do it in blue as well if you wanted to. Glasses back on. And then all I'm going to do is just in between the trees, here and there, nothing of any consequence, no grand gestures at this point. I'm going to pop some of that colour in and pull it across in the same way, so that when we turn it the right way round, we can see that that mist now actually has some physicality. You've got a little bit of a kind of nod to the weight of it going on. And then I'm going to leave it alone, okay? That is as far as I am going to take my project this week, because I think that's an awful lot of techniques for you to take in. So just to recap, we did the sky, we took our cobalt blue, we pulled the colour in to get that sense of the light disappearing over our focal point, which at the moment is about here. It might change, okay, over there. And then we took our cobalt violet, we put those distant hills in. We did one over there, and we did this little one poking up here. Then we looked at these hills which have a much crisper outline on the horizon. We popped a little bit cobalt blue, bit of cobalt violet, bit of Jane's Grey in, translucent grey if that's what you've got. We then dried everything. Then what we did was we took a little bit of the green apatite genuine, a nod to what's going to happen down here in the foreground, and we double loaded our brush. So we picked up the green apatite genuine, we tipped the few hairs into the cobalt violet so that when we tapped that in, we had that lovely tree line. And then as a nod to the weight of the mist that is going on in the background, we added a little bit of the translucent grey, the tiniest of amounts, down there in amongst the trees, so that when we come to do this lovely kind of bright, vibrant foreground, it should all stand out. Now, let's take you back, face on. Now, don't disappear. I know this gets to the point in the morning where the kettle goes on and you all disappear. I have important information for you. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to see if there's any other questions. As if you are watching this live, these comments are coming in via Facebook and I need to address them whilst you have been good enough to watch me live. What's going on? Lots of people talking about their paper, which is good. Swap notes. What works for somebody might just be the perfect thing for you. Lots of people saying that they're learning an awful lot. That's good. You know, my job is done then. That's good. Pam is liking the slow pace. I know some of you will be getting frustrated. I know some of you have messaged me and gone, I'm sorry, I had to paint the whole thing. I get it. It would be me. I've had to put this away. The temptation for me to finish it is huge. Pippa is saying that she wouldn't have known where to start without the demo. I'm pleased about that. Landscapes are tricky little beings. They're full of all sorts of, I want to say aspects. I think you know what I mean, that kind of layers, and the layers are so important. When we do something in close up, that's the thing we're concentrating on. It's a simple background, then it's the thing. That kind of scenery where you're looking at distance and perspective and tone and aerial perspective and all of that kind of stuff can be really off-putting, and that's what we don't want. Lots of people liking the artist demo days, which you can still watch via catch up. Mum's in the room. Morning, Mum. Just showing off my beautiful Easter present from my mother. made by her own fair hands, obviously. Lots of people liking lots of people saying hello to my mum. Lots of people tuning in. This is a good question. Anne is saying, is there any way to identify papers? Have some that got mixed up over the years. Oh, Anne, I hate to be the one I hate saying this to people because it's not helpful. Experience. When we get back into having face-to-face sessions again, find your watercolour tutor or somebody who knows what they're talking about with watercolour papers, and then they may be able to help you. You'll never get a definitive answer. You can get best guess. You certainly would be able to tell the difference probably between a cotton-rich paper and a cellulose paper. All of that's explained over on the website. But they'd certainly be able to kind of put you in the right ballpark. To be honest, the best way to do it, get a brush full of colour, blah, 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 on the back, whatever works for you, and make your decisions like that. Just be astonishingly careful that old watercolour paper isn't always a good thing. It's a bit of a misnomer in the art world that, old watercolour paper is so much better than new watercolour paper. That's not true, because it depends on how you've stored it. You don't want the sizing on it, the thing that stops it acting like blotting paper, to have broken down. It is a natural product. It might have broken down, and then you'll get some very funny marks on your piece of paper. Lots of people saying good morning. Lots of people are saying that they like the breakdown, all of those kind of things. Lots to think about. Okay, that was always going to happen with a landscape project like this. This is when you go away and you go, okay, and you need to think about it. And I can see Jo has particularly said that she's using the same techniques on a different landscape. It's all kind of transferable skills. That's a buzzword, isn't it? That you can put across onto other projects. So that's good. Right, the bit of information that I have for you. Very exciting. On the 26th of April, that's a Monday, 26th of April, 9 a.m. UK time. That's the 26th of April, 2021, for the purposes of the tape, just in case this sits on my YouTube for future audiences. Make sure you are on my website at 9 o'clock in the morning. That is when all of my July to December classes go live. Now, because of the pandemic, it has changed the way that I teach. So I now teach in all sorts of guises. You have pre-recorded tutorials going live that you can watch at your leisure. You can sign up for a class. That could be an evening class, it could be a daytime class, it could be a monthly membership. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can join me for that class. That is the more bespoke, one-on-one. Whilst you're in a class, I will give you much better feedback on your own work. You might want to join me for a whole day. You probably saw over on the Learning to Paint page the giraffes that we did last week on black watercolour paper. And one of the things that we offer as part of those tutorials is you get to photograph your work, email it to me, and I will give you much greater feedback one-to-one. You'll be able to propel your skills that way. Of course, don't forget, if you fancy coming down to Dorset, from July onwards, we will be hosting all-day workshops here in the village at my beautiful village hall. You will be astonishingly welcome, and all of those go live on the 26th at 9 a.m. Make sure you are on my website and you'll be able to book for those. There's plenty to choose from. What can I think of on the top of my head? Red pandas, poppy seed heads. There's some landscapes in there, animal portraits, working on black watercolour paper, raindrops, eyes, all sorts of subject matter that I haven't covered in the last 6 months will be there for you to join in. In the meantime, do pop over to the website. Let's get you the website details up. So www.alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk. That is the view of my website if you are looking at it on a desktop or a laptop or something like that. If you're looking at it on a mobile phone, that menu will be in a different place, but you can see there you've got Ali's blog, live tuition, the All Aboard Artists, the membership scheme that I run, artist demo days, the calendar of events if you want to know where it is that I am popping up. But there you have resources as well. Lots of information there on watercolour paper, watercolour paints, all sorts of things. Now, Mick is asking a very pertinent question. Mick is saying, will you be doing any live demos at the SAA in Newark? Mick, we have dates in. Obviously, it's very tricky to predict at the moment because it depends on the situation. But watch this space. I promise you, as soon as those have been okayed and as soon as those are kind of more set in stone, you'll be the first to know. I absolutely promise you. Andrea, if you ever want to travel to Dorset and make a holiday of it, you will be welcome with open arms. Now, next week, I will be on the SAA page. I am doing a tiger in gouache and pastel pencil if you happen to be a member. I will also be back on Hoshanda. That isn't called Hoshanda anymore. It's called the Craft Store. I will be demonstrating 2 lots of paint I have never demonstrated on television before. Always the right time to be doing that, isn't it? So lots of things coming up, lots of things that you can take part in, interact with. As always, don't forget I am here if you need anything. If you have any questions, pop them over on the Learning to Paint with Alison Seaboard page over on Facebook. Take lots of care of yourselves, and I will see you next week for the next instalment of the Landscape Project. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.